the degree of love that's here, because you feel it yourself as much as I do. You're as much aware of it as I am. You can't help knowing that right now we are a group of people who only a short time ago were unknown to each other, and yet at this moment know each other, love each other, trust each other, and have something so much in common that we really and truly are one in this universe, one in our understanding, one in our love for God, one in our love for each other. You can feel in this room that there is a communion between us. And if you can look behind the scenes, you will find why it is. It is that in our union with God, we have come into union with each other. It is because our communion with God has made a communion between us. If you will remember this, you will never at any time let envy, jealousy, misunderstanding come into the atmosphere of this group of students. Never, regardless of what the appearances may be. If you will remember the atmosphere of the classroom and the atmosphere of this room this evening, there never will be gossip, there never will be malice, there never will be opposition, and this group can remain united until kingdom comes as an example to the rest of the world of how people can live together in amity, in love, in oneness, when God is the central theme of their existence. Now, if one of us should pull ahead further in this work than another, it should not arouse any criticism, judgment, or condemnation on the part of those who are following behind, because it is inevitable. Remember this. It is inevitable that there will be 1, 2, 3, 6, 10 who will make faster spiritual progress and show it forth in greater outer experience than others. That is because we are states and stages of consciousness, and some came to the work better prepared than others. Then also, there are some willing and perhaps able to put in more at this particular time than others. I mean, give more of themselves, more in time, more in effort, more in meditation, more in study. And it is inevitable that they will make faster progress than others. Now, in organized work, this condition makes for the envies and jealousies and discords that come into organizational religious activities. One wants to be the leader and the other one gets it, or one wants to be the reader or the director or the lecturer and somebody else gets there before them. And always in organizational religious activity, you will find these discords. Now, if you will remember this, that can never happen among students of the infinite way. Here is the point. Consciousness must externalize itself. And our degree of consciousness externalizes itself. Therefore, whatever unfoldment takes place in us is the direct result of our own degree of spiritual attainment outwardly expressing itself. And so if we see others jumping ahead of us, let us remember that they are spiritually unfolding more quickly or more deeply than we are. let us never ascribe these things to anything other than that. In other words, nobody in this world can hold back me or you. Only our own consciousness will place us wherever we find ourselves. And if we are not going ahead as rapidly as we would like to, be honest enough to say, I am not putting in enough, and that's why I'm not drawing out enough. Because it all is a matter of individual consciousness. It all is a matter of our individual degree of spiritual unfoldment. Nobody can hold you back if your consciousness develops. Nobody can push you forward if your consciousness doesn't develop. That is why in this work we have no diplomas and we have no authorizations. In other words, there is nobody in any position, not even I myself am in a position to authorize anybody as a practitioner or as a leader or as a teacher or as a lecturer. But I might also say to you that there isn't anybody with any authority to stop you from being any of those. All you have to do is have the consciousness that heals, and you are a practitioner. All you have to do is have the understanding of the principle and the healing consciousness, and you'll find people coming to you to be taught. So you'll find that you are a teacher. And so inevitably, you place yourself by your degree of unfolded consciousness, not by the degree of your ambition to be something. Because if you do achieve anything by ambition, you won't hold on to it. Nobody can, unless they're in some organization that gives them a place and position and then holds them in it. But in a work like this that is unorganized, nobody can place you or hold you. I have actually witnessed where someone has taken over our Infinite Way work in a city where it was a big and a flourishing work, and in 6, 8, 9 months' time, nothing was left of it. Nothing was left of it for them. It still was the full and complete work for me, but not for them. Why? Because they had not developed the consciousness to attain it or to retain it. And no one can do that for them any more than I. Yes, if someone were to start healing work here, I could say right here in this room now, if you find yourself in need of help, so-and-so is beginning to do healing work, you might turn to them. Well, you know that if they haven't really got a healing consciousness, that wouldn't do any more for them than if I'd have said nothing. Nobody would go to them, and if somebody did go to them, they wouldn't stay very long if they didn't get the result of going. Do you see what I mean by that? That I might, in my position, be enabled to name somebody and have 100 people go to them. But how long do you think it would last? Only long enough for them to find they weren't getting the result of going, and then they wouldn't go anymore. Do you see that? So my recommendation is absolutely worthless. It's not worth having. It is your own consciousness that draws unto you your own. Then as you draw them to yourself, they remain with you, and it becomes a mutual blessing. Therefore, since there are no court favorites and no one being pushed and no one being placed, each one demonstrating their own place and position, it must be clear to you that that is what is going on, and should someone stand out before their time, not be ready, don't worry, they will not hold it. It is very much like the Bible incidents of do not fight these people. Because if what they're doing is of God, you'll be found fighting against God. If it's of man, leave it alone. You don't have to fight it. It will destroy itself. And that is just the way it is with this infinite way message. There is no use fighting it, because if it is of God, you'd wreck yourself fighting against God. If it's of man, don't bother to fight it either, because regardless of any immediate sense of prosperity, eventually it will fall by the wayside by its own nothingness. And so it is with all other teachings. Let us not fight them, because if they're of God, who wants to fight that which is of God? If they're of man, let's not fight them, because they will fall by the weight of their own nothingness. Always the wheat and the tares will grow together, side by side, and please let us let them grow together, because in the right time the tares will take themselves off where they belong. Do you see that? That is why we can take the position, I and the Father are one, and in proportion to my realization of that will I unfold. And it has nothing to do with my neighbor to the left or my neighbor to the right. It has to do only with me and my individual unfoldment. Now, there is a point that we must remember, and that is this. We do not go to God for anything, for the simple reason that it would be kind of foolish at this stage of our unfoldment to believe that God will do something for us that God won't do for our neighbor, or that God will do something for us today or tomorrow that God isn't already doing. Therefore, there is no use of going to God as if we were seeking to influence God to do something for us, or to get God to start doing something that God hasn't already been doing, or to believe that for any reason God is withholding our good. Now let us get over these theological beliefs and come to understand the nature of God. This I give you. God is. God is good. And God is omnipresent. God is present where I am. God is present where you are, in all of its infinite goodness. The presence of God is here. The power of God is here. The intelligence, the wisdom of God is here. The love of God is here. The allness of God is here. And none of us can make it so, and none of us can prevent its being so. It is so. God is. Now then, for us to avail ourselves of that good, to bring that good into our experience, means opening our own individual consciousness to the receptivity of the presence, power, and activity of God. Let us quote the poet, God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Let us quote the other one, Browning. We must open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. We must not seek to get God's goodness to come to us. We must agree that God's goodness is embodied within us. The goodness and allness of God constitutes our very being. Now you remember in one of the classes I said there are people who believe they are seeking companionship, and they ask for help for companionship, and that isn't really what they mean at all. What they're looking for are companions. If they were looking for companionship, they wouldn't have to ask for help. Why? Because companionship isn't something outside of our being. Companionship is a quality of our own being, and we have to express it. Not look to somebody else to express it. We have to express it. It is as wrong to seek companionship as it is to seek integrity, loyalty, fidelity. Why? How are you going to get integrity, loyalty, or fidelity anywhere if you haven't already got it within your own being? It is you and I who must express integrity, not look to somebody else to express it. Their life is their own. Whether or not someone else wants to express integrity is their own business. No one can hurt you or me by a lack of integrity. They can only hurt themselves. Oh, here and there somebody may temporarily deprive us of some dollars or pounds, but be assured that's not hurting us. There's plenty more where they came from, and they'll continue to unfold. But the injury that is done is to the one not expressing integrity. And so it is with companionship. Let us not look to somebody else for companionship. That's absolutely wrong. Let us understand that companionship is a quality of God which is embodied in us, and then let us start to express companionship. Let us express it where we are. Let us express it with each other in this room. Then let us go out and express it in our families, in our business, in our friends. Never look for it in someone else. Look for it only within ourselves. Open out a way for companionship to go. And if there isn't a human being around, look for a bird, or look for an animal, look for a pet. And you will find that opportunities will be given to you to express companionship, and the companionship that flows out from you is the same companionship that comes back to you, just as the integrity that flows out from you is the integrity that you draw back unto yourself. Never look to anyone in this world for gratitude. Don't expect it of anyone. Don't look for it. Look for gratitude within yourself and express it. And the gratitude that you express is the gratitude that comes back to you. The secret of it is cast your bread upon the waters. You give out gratitude. You give out love. You give out companionship. You give out cooperation. You give out friendship. And that is the bread of life, the substance of life that you are casting upon the waters of life, and it comes back to you with butter and jam and sugar abundantly. It has to, because it is a spiritual law of God that the good that comes into our experience is the reflex action of the good that flows out from us. Browning really knew it when he said that we must not open a way for good to come into us, but open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. And it is imprisoned. Every one of us is bottling up within ourselves some measure of reserve, some measure of holding back, some measure of shyness, some measure of all of these qualities of God with which God has imbued us. Now, if you were to watch a child, a baby in its first year, you would find that it is expressing these very qualities that I'm speaking of. Trust, faith, joy, smiles, laughter, play, all of the things that we would love to have in our own hearts. Now then, human experience has built up for us a shell. And those innate God qualities that were given to us in the beginning and which we brought into this world with us are now bottled up because some one person has injured us. We hold back for fear that all the rest of the world will do the same to us. One woman is disappointed in love and distrusts all men after that. One man gets a raw deal from some woman and he won't open up and trust a woman after that. One businessman has an unpleasant experience with a partner or a customer or something of that kind, and from then on clams up within himself, withdraws, and will not let those qualities out for fear that the rest of the world will cheat him also. And so as years go on, each of us draws back inside of himself a little more and more, withholds a little love here, a little faith here, a little trust here, until we are nothing but a prison house for the splendors of God, and we do not let them out. Now the time has come for us to understand that the qualities we brought into this world as newborn babies, those gurgling little laughs, that joyful little trust that puts its hand out when somebody wants to lift it, that is the thing that we have got to reestablish within ourselves so that we can go out in the world in the same atmosphere that we met here in this room tonight, and it was a joyous one, because it was one of mutual love and mutual trust. We have to go out into the world that way, but we have to go out into the world not expecting it from the world, but expressing it ourselves to the world, and then letting that be a reflex action that comes to us. I have been criticized for telling this story, but I'll risk a little more criticism and tell it again, that there is a story about a man who took his little 4 or 5 year child out on the steps of his house and said, "Sonny, stand up on that first step and jump into Daddy's arms." And the child got up on the first step and jumped into Daddy's arms. And then he said, "Now go up on the second step and jump into Daddy's arms," and went up on the second step and jumped into Daddy's arms. Daddy caught him. He said, "Now go up on the third step and jump into Daddy's arms," and he went up on the third step. Daddy let him fall down and get hurt. The child started to cry. He said, "Now you see, that'll teach you a lesson. Never trust anybody." Don't you know that's what's happened to us? We've gotten a bruise here and a bruise there, and we've become a lot of human beings with a lot of imprisoned splendor that we're afraid to let out. Or, like the British people are supposed to be, they've developed a reserve, and so they don't open up as some other people do. Why that reserve? Why? We're all equally children of God. We're all equal in the sight of the Father, white or black, Jew or Gentile. We're all one in Christ Jesus, and there's no need for any reserve except the reserve of integrity. That's all. Now, if we understand that we don't have to go to God for anything, God has constituted its qualities as our own being, we then begin to understand that our work in life is opening consciousness to the inflow and outflow, if you will, at least it's that way to appearances, of the spiritual presence and spiritual power. You can do this if you will begin with understanding that your good does not come to you, that your good is the reflex action of spiritual presence. Now watch what I mean. You are looking up here and you see a human being sitting in a chair. Now, suppose that this human Joel sitting up here in a chair could, in some miraculous way, bring God itself right here beside him. And you could see that. Would you not immediately say, lucky fellow, your troubles are all over. You've got God. You've got that which multiplies loaves and fishes. You've got that which is the healer. You've got that which is the resurrector. You have got that which is life eternal. What more can you have? You've got God. With God, all things are possible. All good is possible. Protection, safety, security. You're fixed for life. And you would be absolutely right. If I can be still, if I can get quiet enough until I feel God as an actual reality, a presence and a power within me, until I can feel that divine impulse, that spiritual impulse that flows, then I am a lucky fellow, because from then on nothing can happen to me throughout all time. I can't die. I may make a transition from human sight, but I can't die. I can't lack. Nothing of a negative nature can happen to me, because the presence of God is an annihilation to even a belief or a suspicion of anything apart from God. Now that is the secret of the whole message of the infinite way. We have no need of demonstrating supply. We have no need of demonstrating companionship or home or employment. We have no need of demonstrating anything on the face of this globe. We have only one demonstration to make, and that is the conscious awareness, the conscious feel or feeling of the presence of God, the conscious oneness or union with God. It isn't easy, but it can be accomplished by every single one of us, and in the beginning it may seem to be only in a tiny degree, but as we continue in the practice, it increases and increases and increases until undoubtedly the day comes when we can be like the Master, who always had consciously with him the Father within. He didn't even have to turn stones into bread and perform a miracle when he was an hungered. He could just wait and let the Father, in his own good time, do any of the miracle making that was necessary to be done. Now, in the writings and in the recordings, you will read and you will hear over and over and over again the passages, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Lean not unto thine own understanding, acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he will give thee peace, rest, harmony." If you abide in this word and let this word abide in you, then you will be as a branch that is at one with the vine, and the vine one with the Godhead, and you will bear fruit richly. And you will find, the 91st Psalm, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High." And you will find this, that it isn't a matter of God, it is a matter of you and of me maintaining this conscious oneness with God, keeping our mind stayed on God, acknowledging God in all our ways. It really means, let us say, awaking in the morning and actually bringing God right into the bed with us before we step out and say, this is the day the Lord hath made. God is with me through this day. Then get out. And then, while you're at your toilet preparations, again, instead of thinking on your problems of the day, or your troubles of the day, or your sins, or your diseases of the day, force yourself to bring God into your awareness with the realization that if I'm supposed to forgive 70 times 7, then God's got to forgive 700 times 700 times 7. And so I look for a day of forgiveness for my sins of omission or commission. And God is the multiplier of loaves and fishes, so God is my supply. And He performeth that which is given me to do. I can face any of the tasks of this day in the realization that I do not face them alone. Emmanuel, God with us, is that which enables me to do, to be, to prosper. And so it is that when it comes to breakfast time, we dare not forget to blink our eyes and say, thank you, Father, silently, secretly, not outwardly, in the recognition that God is the bread on our table, and the meat, and the wine, and the water, and the tea or the coffee. God is the substance of that which we eat. God is the source from which it comes, and God is the very essence and substance of it. Then we leave the house for one reason or another, and again consciously realize God's presence goes before me to make the crooked places straight. We have to enter other doors. It may be marketing or shopping or into our business place or visiting friends or relatives, but we must consciously know that God is greeting us inside those doors. It becomes an activity of truth in your consciousness and mine in all our ways. Acknowledge Him in all your ways. You will find that you are obeying Paul's injunction, pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. Keep your mind stayed on God. Acknowledge Him in all thy ways. If you're driving a car, acknowledge God to be the driver, but not only of your car, but of all cars. Acknowledge Him in all thy ways. Then you find that at first you have in God a partner. In God you have a big brother. In God you have the Father within. In God you have what Paul had. I can do all things through Christ. I live, yet not I. Christ liveth my life. And you find it's literally true. Someday, if you keep this up long enough, persistently enough, and watch the beauties and harmonies of it, the day will come when you will disappear. And there'll be no you anymore. There will be only God functioning as your individual being. And there won't be any you to think about God. There'll only be God thinking through you. Not so much thinking as being, knowing, living. That's what he meant, Paul, when he said, I live, yet not I. It's really Christ that liveth my life. And one of our well-known writers, was it Sir Royan, who recently said that God lives our lives and we just go along for the ride. And it is true. At a stage of our experience, God is living our life, and we follow, we become beholders, we watch these glories unfold, and it seems like a miracle that it should be happening to us. What have we done to deserve this? Nothing. We've done nothing. There isn't a human being in the world good enough to deserve God's grace. Why? The human being dies and is dissolved, so that the spiritual being is the one that is the Son of God and is receiving God's grace and our humanhood disappears. What is our humanhood? Our finiteness, our reserve, our holding in this prison these great splendors of God. That's our humanhood. When we are no longer holding these splendors in prison, when we are no longer holding our friendships and our love in reserve, when we are letting God through, we're no longer human beings. Then we're told, if so be the Spirit of God dwell in you, then are you sons of God. And that's what happens. You're no longer finite, you're no longer mortals, you're no longer people who were born and who will die. Now are ye children of God, if so be the Spirit of God dwell in you. And how do we know when the Spirit of God dwells in us? When we can meet the world as we met each other here tonight in that spontaneous feeling of love and joy in meeting each other and rejoining each other. When we can wake up in the morning and feel that way to the world, then we can know that the Spirit of God dwells. When we no longer condemn the people of this world, I don't mean by that approve some of the nasty things that some of the people do, but when we stop holding people in condemnation for it and realize, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. When we stop our heckling of people, when we stop our fault-finding, when we acknowledge that the world is returning to us what we are sending out into the world, then is the Spirit of God dwelling in us. When we have learned to forgive plenty of the offenses that are aimed at us personally, racially, religiously, nationally, when we have learned enough of forgiveness, then the Spirit of God really and truly dwells in us. And when we are obedient to the Ninth Commandment. Now, I do not know whether we have taken up the subject of the Ninth Commandment, which is, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Ordinarily, that is understood to mean that you shouldn't gossip or bear tales or repeat scandal about your neighbor, but in the infinite way, it has a far, far deeper meaning than that. Far deeper. To bear false witness against your neighbor is to accept them as human beings, even good ones. To even say that so-and-so is good or healthy is to bear false witness against your neighbor, because you are holding him in thought as finite human beings who were born and who will die, who may be good today and bad tomorrow. To obey this commandment of not bearing false witness against your neighbor, you have got to stop believing that your neighbor is good or bad, but understand that they're spiritual beings. We have got to see each other not as good human beings, but as spiritual beings, immortal, eternal, having no good qualities and having no bad qualities, having only the qualities of God which are spiritual. You see, if the qualities of God were good, they could lapse into badness. They'd be pairs of opposites. But God has no pairs of opposites. That which is of God is an infinity and an eternality. Therefore, it can't be white or black. It can't be good or bad. It can't be beautiful or unbeautiful. It is a state of invisible spiritual being, and that's what you are, and that's what I am. If you could only realize it, this that you see here isn't me. This is my body. And so, if you're looking at this and judging, you are judging very unrighteous judgment, because I, Joel, am invisible, and you have never seen me, and you can't see me. There's only one way that you can see me. If you can get still enough and quiet enough so that you come to a state of spiritual realization, then you can see me as I am. And that's spiritual and perfect. And that is what happens in healing work. When a practitioner on the spiritual path works for you, they do not work for health, and they do not work against disease. They do not work for supply, and they do not work against lack. They do not work for your goodness or against your badness. A practitioner who understands the infinite way closes their eyes to your humanhood, whether it's good or bad, rich or poor, high or low, white or black, sinful or saint. Closes themselves completely away from that and tabernacles with God until they attain a state of spiritual realization in which they behold your spiritual nature, your spiritual selfhood, your spiritual being, and that is what results in healing. That is why the treatments that are given in the Infinite Way writings are necessary for a year or 2 or 3, so that you get a solid foundation of the letter of truth and understand what it is you're leading to, not a blind faith. And then after 2 or 3 years, you'll find that your treatments lessen and lessen and lessen. They may begin, it may take you 15 or 20 minutes to give a treatment that will satisfy you, but by the end of a year, you'll find that your average treatment won't be over 2 minutes. And at the end of 2 or 3 years, an average treatment shouldn't be more than 10 seconds. Why? For the same reason that when you start learning arithmetic, it takes a long time to figure out how much 12 times 12 are. But after you've studied it a while, 12 times 12 is just 144. That's how fast it is. So it is with this. It takes a while for you to learn of the spiritual nature of individual being and of what the individual is, what God is and what the relationship is, what the law of God is and how it operates, and therefore you include these in your treatments, and you may give 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes to a treatment before you arrive at a sense of release. That's all right. Don't ever hesitate to spend all the time that's necessary in treatment until you do arrive at that moment of release. But after you have done that, so that you know the letter of truth, you arrive at a place ultimately where none of that enters your thought in treatment. You get still, you get quiet, and if you have to think anything, you think the word God. God is life eternal. God is the only law. God is the only being. We're dealing in this treatment with nothing but God. Then you get still, and all of a sudden you'll feel that spiritual intuition, that spiritual impulse or release, and you will have achieved the awareness of spiritual reality, which is your being and mine. Now, in order to achieve this state of consciousness, you have to begin by practicing it. And the way you practice it is, every person around you, in your home, in your business, in your shops or shopping, every time you pass someone on the street, you must consciously look right at them and behold spiritual beings. Say to yourself, there is the very child of God. Not by looking at their body, but looking through their eyes, or where their eyes would be if they were right in front of you. Look somewhere in the direction of their eyes, and don't see male or female, and don't see good or bad, and don't see rich or poor, but see a light, the light that shines out of a person's eyes, and say, ah, that's the person behind those eyes. That's the spiritual identity, the child of God. This out here is only form or body. But my friend, my neighbor, my passerby on the street, I can see them behind the eye. They are looking out from their eyes. You are. You are looking out through your eyes at me. Right now, most of you are. You're looking through your eyes, but you are sitting in back of your eye. Therefore, I know that you are not physical. You are an invisible spiritual being somewhere in back of those eyes, looking out through the eyes. That's you. You have to learn in all of your relationships, no matter how foreign they may be, I don't care if it's enemy or friend, you must learn to realize that the individual is not visible to you, that they are looking at. That's why the eyes are called the windows of the soul. You, the soul, are looking out through your eyes, and I am looking out through my eyes at you. But the I that I am is invisible, it is spiritual, it is perfect. When I forget that, I may not act like it. But that doesn't change the fact that in my essence and identity and being, that's what I am. I am spiritual. I am perfect. I am of spirit. I am of God. I am in and of God. God constitutes me. God constitutes my individual identity, and anything that I fall short of in living up to that, I can blame on my humanhood, on my birth, my environment, my schooling, my nationality, my race, or something else that has built up a shell around me which forbids or prevents my real spiritual identity being made manifest. And so it is. You are a pure, infinite, spiritual being. And you are invisible to this world. No one has ever seen you, not your own mother, because you are hiding behind those eyes, looking out at this world. And that you is pure, spiritual, eternal, immortal. It will never die. It will always exist, and it will always be an individual state of consciousness. But once you learn this truth, it will be a progressively better outpicturing than it is at this moment. Now, so it is. You see, there's no lazy man's work about this infinite way. There is no mysterious God that just comes down to do things for you. Whatever takes place to benefit you is as a result of your own improved state of consciousness. Some little improvement will come to you through association with your teacher or practitioner. You will benefit from their consciousness just as those who surrounded the Master benefited from his. But you notice that after 3 years, Judas still made a terrible blunder. You notice that after 3 years with the Master, Peter made a terrible blunder, and so did Thomas. As a matter of fact, all 12 did, didn't they? Even having been with the Master for 3 years. So do you see what I mean? That they benefited, but they didn't benefit enough. After he went, and they were on their own, and they saw they had to sink or swim, then they awakened. Then they knew, Jesus can't do anything for me now. I have got to find my union with God. That's why he said, if I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. And so I say to you, you will benefit by association with your teacher. You will benefit by living in the books or in the recordings. But don't go too far with leaning on that. Don't do it. Remember that you yourself must develop your own individual state of consciousness. I remember a Christian Science lecturer one time who did something very, very daring. Some of you know that the opening lines in Mrs. Eddy's textbook are, to those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is great with blessings. And he said, that statement is beautiful, but don't lean too long. And so it is. Don't lean too long even on God. Learn that God constitutes your being, and then you behold spiritual being looking out of every pair of eyes in this world, friend and foe. They may not recognize it. You may be called on to go into hospitals or into prisons. If you stick to this work, you will. But remember this, that you're not supposed to see sick people or bad people. You're supposed to look behind the eye and see the soul of man shining out at you. And when you learn to see the soul of man shining out through those sin-filled eyes or sickly eyes, they will be raised up and healed. It is all up to Jesus Christ when he looks out and says, "What did hinder you? Rise." He was seeing something that was not fettered by a diseased body. He was seeing the soul of man behind the eyes, and he was saying, "You aren't fettered. Pick up that body. You, the soul, back behind those eyes. Pick up that body and walk." And so it is, you will behold the eyes of these so-called sinners, and you will behold the soul back there, and you'll say, "Come on, pick up that body and walk out of this prison house of sin-filled beliefs." Now, that will never happen except as you and I practice the presence of God. Practice seeing the presence of God behind every pair of eyes. Practice the realization that the presence of God is looking out through your eyes into every other eye. Yes, this is a work of praying without ceasing, but not praying to God for something. No. Prayer is your recognition of God at the center of everyone's being. Prayer is your recognition of God as the only power operating in consciousness, and all else as being no power. Prayer is your recognition of God as the life of every individual, and no other life is life but God. That is prayer. Prayer is your recognition of truth. Prayer is your acknowledgement of God in all thy ways. Prayer is an acknowledgement of truth, not as a power over error, but as the only power, and error as having no power. Error doesn't need any God to destroy it, because error isn't a power. Disease doesn't need any God to destroy it, because disease has no law to maintain it or sustain it. It needs you to know this truth. It doesn't need a God. It needs a you. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. When you know the truth that disease has no law, no cause, no continuity, no being, it will then have no effect. Do you see that? You then become the law unto your life, unto my life, unto your neighbor's life. It isn't a question of God. God is already functioning perfectly, maintaining us perfectly, sustaining us perfectly. Let's leave God alone and he'll keep on running this universe. But let you and let me consciously know the truth that makes us free. And the truth is, God is the only power. And disease is not a power, sin is not a power, lack is not a power, hate is not a power, envy is not a power, jealousy is not a power. None of these things that are supposedly causing disease can cause disease, because they aren't power and disease is power. But if you are going to give them power and say, I've been a little lustful in my thoughts today, so I must expect rheumatism tomorrow. Or I have been envious of somebody's good fortune today, so probably I must expect bad luck tomorrow. If you make such laws for yourself, you bring them into being. That's what people are doing every day in metaphysics. They're binding themselves under laws of disease by saying my envy, my jealousy, my lust, or my animality is causing this disease. And practitioners very often are binding their patients by saying, oh, if you were only more loving, you could get a healing, or if you were more generous, or if you were just more forgiving. Well, they're binding them more tightly in the grasp of the belief of disease by giving mental cause power. Mental cause isn't any more power than physical cause is. If germs aren't power, and we all see them operate in human belief as power, why should we accept mental power as power? It isn't power unless there is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Now, if you're going to think that germs have power, you have made it so in your experience. If you, however, are going to say, oh no, germs can't bother me, but wrong thinking can, then you have made that a law unto yourself. But if you rise into the spiritual realm, you will say, God alone made all that was made, and all that God made is good, and anything that God didn't make never was made. Therefore, there's no evil presence, and there's no evil power, and there's no evil cause. Now, of course, we are contradicting appearances, because to human sense, to worry will produce ulcers. Lots of people have worried, lots of people have had ulcers from it. Oh yes, but lots of people have had germs and then gotten cold and grippe and flu and pneumonia from it. So on the third dimensional plane, on the physical plane, germs do cause disease. And probably on the mental plane, worry causes ulcers, and maybe these other things cause other things. But does that make them laws, or does that make them beliefs which we have accepted as laws? If the germ theory is a belief, then mental cause theory is a belief. And there's only one law. Why? Because God is infinite. And God is law. Therefore, spirit is the only law there is. So don't have a mental law any more than you will have a physical law. Don't have a mental cause any more than you will have a physical cause. Rise into the fourth dimension of life and say, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit. Go back again to the Hebrew prophet, who, when his people came and said, look, the enemies are more than we are. You know what he said? They have only the arm of flesh. No matter how many numbers they are, they're only the arm of flesh. We have the Lord God Almighty. In other words, we don't have might and we don't have power. We have spirit. They've got might, they've got power, but we have spirit. Do you see that? So it is. Maybe germs do cause disease in that world where they're accepted. Maybe there's a mental cause for disease in that world where they're accepted. But it's the arm of flesh, I say to you. We have the truth, and the truth will make you free. And the truth is, God is truth, and God is life, and God is power, and God is one. God is law, God is infinite law, God is spirit. All law is spiritual law. Therefore, neither sin, nor disease, nor death have power to perpetuate themselves, because they have no law to sustain them with. Never forget that. But it operates in our experience only if ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It hasn't anything to do with God. God is being God. You can rest assured of that. God is being God while the people are sick in hospitals. God is being God while the boys are killed at the front. God is being God while wars are going on, wiping out millions of people. God is God while infection and contagion is going on. God is God while innocent children are being born deaf, dumb, blind, crippled. God is being God. What good is it to all these people? They are as branches cut off that withereth. Why? because ye must abide in this truth, and let this truth abide in you. And then if you do that, you are praying without ceasing, and none of these evils will come nigh thy dwelling place. You say, can I take all my family into this heaven with me? Not always. 1,000 shall fall at thy left hand, and 10,000 at thy right, and some of them may be your family or mine. Why? Well, for the same reason that we can't have 10,000 people listening to what I'm saying to you tonight. What I'm saying to you tonight can be life and health to those who can receive it. And why are there only these few receiving it? Because these are the few that are ready for it and are drawn here. They weren't sent for. The Spirit within them drew them to their own, and so you can receive it. And by your example, you will influence members of your family, but not all members of your family. You will influence some of your friends, but not all your friends. Some of your families will desert you, and some of your friends will desert you. Why? Because you will be living in a realm of consciousness where you can't even converse with them. You won't even be able to sit in the same room and listen